need to be able to carve and stake out a women's agenda where female parliamentarians advocate and push issues that have to deal with women specifically.
What do you personally want the women of Guyana to know as they come out to your rally, to the rallies, and listen to you speak? What is your underlying message to the women of Guyana?
I want them to know that they are a powerhouse. When you look at the results, people graduating from the University of Guyana, when you open the newspaper and you look at passes at CXC and CAPE, women are doing tremendous things in our society at all levels. And I want to encourage them and say to them that the little support that they need to do even better, that will garnish and improve their independence, that will give them the material things they need to better look after their families and their communities. We are committed to doing that. And I just want them to know that, we are very fortunate that we are more and more women are coming out with the requisite skills, they're getting the jobs.
Mhm.
That is not to say that we don't worry about our men, because that is a whole other issue. But I have to say that in terms of education, in terms of employment, women are making strides and we want them to continue. In fact, I personally think that part of some of the domestic violence and abuse that we see is just because our men folk are having challenges because they don't have the requisite skills, they cannot find the jobs, and therefore the women are going out and there are more and more women that are the breadwinners in families. And so you have issues with the power structure. You think you're going out there tonight just because you will earn the money? No, no, no. I'm telling you, I don't want you to be going out with your girlfriends. All those are the traditional thinking that, the things that are real that we have to start to move away from.
Dr. Hinds, why do you keep fighting for a better Guyana? I mean, this question seems almost silly, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And why do you keep fighting so much? And how would you describe a post-colonial, a democratic post-colonial Guyana?
Well, no, I part of it is personal. I was born very poor, as all of us did, and I want to see a better world, a better country, a better place where those who don't have can have. And I feel that I have been fortunate to rise above that to some extent, and I have a duty to look out for those who are still left at the bottom. So I continue to fight. But there's also a second reason. I'm one of those who fought against the previous government and in a sense facilitated the rise of this government. And I think it's only fair that having fought against the previous government and now living in the presence of one that is worse, that I have a double duty to have to free Guyana from this one. Mm. So part of it is political, part of it is personal. Also, it has political, part of it is personal. Also, it has to do with the fact that I believe that Guyana has the potential, like other post-plantation societies, to show the rest of the world that slavery and indentureship and colonialism are not hindrances to achieving our humanity. And I think if we can get it right in Guyana, then we are able to lift humanity. And I think that is very, very important, to lift humanity to another level. I want to say something on the domestic violence. See, Guyana is a violent place, period. Mm-hmm. Economic violence, domestic violence, and as both Stanley and Cathy said, there is a relationship between economic violence and domestic violence. And they've laid out the argument that men are victims of economic violence, and then they take refuge in domestic violence. But women are also victims of economic violence. And a lot of time women stay in violent relationships for economic reasons. The man is the breadwinner. So I'm going to take my blows and stay and so forth. So, you know, we have to try to make Guyana a less violent place. And it is when, that is the reason when I heard a former president in the public arena talk about kicking asses. You know, I take a very dim view of that because our young people have been socialized over the last 2 decades or so to believe that kicking ass is the solution to problems. And here is the president of the country reinforcing that. And so I want to make that linkage between domestic violence, which has always been there, but I want to say that that domestic violence has been escalated by the violent mode of governance of the PPP regime. I think, you know, post-colonial experience, it has been easily the most violent government. And we can see it with people who are being killed at all levels. Men killing women, police killing young men, phantom squad killing this squad, and the government and the president kicking ass. And so part of our challenge as we go past May 11 is how to cleanse Guyana from the violence that has overtaken it in the last 20 years.
And Stanley, why do you get up every day, or why are you so determined to see a new Guyana, a modern Guyana?
Well, if David and Cathy and myself and all the other Guyanese who are doing what we're trying to do didn't do that, then we might as well pack our bags and go to somewhere else, you know, the North Pole or the South Pole, and retire. I firmly believe that Guyana's best days are ahead of it because of what David and Cathy said earlier. With the technology today, you can no longer fool the younger generation about what it is that's happening out there. Long ago, I remember if I wanted to send a mail to Canada, you had to write a mail form in the olden days. And afterward, we had telegram. Then we had telefax, all of which takes a lot of time. Now, my son won a go-kart race one Sunday a couple of years ago at the circuit. And within 30 seconds, my sister sent me a message saying, I see your son is now a champion. I said, oh, you know that? She said, well, somebody took a photograph, and within 10 seconds, it was all over the world. And the beauty about that is that you can no longer fool people about what's happening anywhere in the world. Because something's happening in Tunisia or Egypt or Libya, and the world within seconds knows exactly what happened. And then they can start airing their views and their opinions, whether they're right or wrong, but they are free to do that. And that vehicle, as you know very well, has changed the world. The other thing that I want to say to you is that Guyana, with a little bit of vision, and you don't have to be, you know, a great visionary. Guyana is so simple to change. Guyana's population of 700,000, we're not a country. I mean, I feel saddened when people ask me, how y'all got all the problems with 700,000 people? That's a village in China. You know, General Electric in the United States, GE, employs 800,000 people. And they don't have all them institutions like we got so many government ministers and this and that. And they run a very efficient operation with a very high income, higher than Guyana's budget. So what we need is cohesion. The other thing that we don't need, I can tell you, we don't need to borrow large sums of money to fix most of the things we have in the problems in Guyana with. I did a presentation a few weeks ago to the media about Guyana 2030, which anybody can see now on Guyana2030.com. It's a website, about a holistic approach to solve all of the infrastructure problems we have coming into Georgetown from the south, the east, and the west. To fix that, in Guyana right now in the private banks, there's 1.7 billion US dollars lying down doing nothing, earning not even 1% interest. We need a system like what Mandela put into South Africa when he became president, where he set up the South Africa Development Fund, where Guyanese, in this case South Africans, can invest in their own country. But politicians, whether it's here or in other parts of the world, don't want the people to be involved so they can scrutinize what's happening and see what they want done. They want to borrow money where they can control it. But if the Guyanese were given the opportunity to invest that 1.7 billion and to raise capital, which would easily you can raise another 1.7 billion to match it with a foreign investor, all of the problems that we have can be fixed within the next 5 years within the infrastructure of Ghana to make our life a lot easier to commute and to get around Ghana. And as you know, if you fix infrastructure and leave the people to do the things they know to do themselves, which is to set up their own little private schools and their own little institutions and not interfere, in 5 years, Ghana could be unrecognizable. But you got, as David says, take government out of the ear of everybody. Let the Guyanese people decide what they want to do once they stay within the law, and let them do it. We can fix this ourselves. We don't need any big messiah or what do you call it, boss presiding over us. Right? Each member of Ghana, each family member of Ghana at the level of parents can tell you what they need to do. And the other thing we mustn't fool ourselves with is no government gives us anything. My education, David's education, Cathy, our parents made sacrifices. The home we lived in, parents made sacrifices. The cars we drive, parents. No government gave us any of that. And if you're sitting down and waiting and believing that, as one said, if you put me back in government, I can fix this. I mean, we need to I, right? Every Guyanese will take care of their own interests, given the opportunity to do the things they can do and to educate themselves without undue interference from politics.
And you, Kathy, why do you do this? Why do you do what you do? Why do you get up every day
You know,
and fight this
you know,
fight?
I had the good fortune to live in the U.S., in England, in Jamaica, and to work in several places. And in those societies which one would think are the advanced society, the developed societies, we call them, I recognize that Guyana had so much potential, but I continue to be angry that we just speak of this potential. And so I decided, you know what? I got to see this potential in my lifetime, to see this potential in my lifetime. I remember my mom and I used to have a running joke. She would always say, Kathy girl, this ain't gonna change in my lifetime. And I used to say, Mom, hell it gonna happen in my lifetime. And it's funny because about 3 years ago, I found myself on one occasion saying to her, Mom, I don't think it gonna happen in mine. My mom has since passed away. And I remember saying to her, hearing her say to me when I said that, oh, something wrong because you always used to say it can happen in yours. So I'm really on a march. If I sit down and do nothing, and if Guyanese sit down and do nothing, we will continue to have what we had for the last 60 years. If we get up and we go, if we create a vision for ourselves, we haven't talked about the national development strategy. I know you talked about a conversation with Guyanese. Guyanese talk all the time. When you go on the street, the average Guyanese can tell you exactly what we need to do. The challenge is we have set up a system. We have a governance system, a government that locks out people, that doesn't allow them to shape the decisions that the government makes. And therefore, that's why we have this winner take all system where just a few people decides how it's going to be done. And that can't work. I think the day the average Guyanese will be able to ensure that our leaders are accountable to us, that we tell them as we did when we created that national development strategy, where thousands and thousands of Guyanese from all over the country in all sectors sat down and wrote down their vision. And Stanley just recently had another fantastic presentation where we've updated Guyana 21 and now we've gone to Guyana 2030. We got to start implementing these ideas. That's what it takes. And I am confident that with the right leaders in place, we can start to implement and we won't be talking. Any government that hasn't done it in the last 20 years, don't believe that they can do it in the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, that's just a stupidity.
In the chat room, Raquel TC said, the stats have not changed indeed for rape victims. Women don't feel that there is a safe space to report rapes. All need to be involved in solving this problem, but the justice system needs to work. And Anon has a question for you, Cathy. Cathy, what are your party's plans to deal with the multiple health issues that Guyana faces?
Well, one of the things we are committed to doing is that, and that's why we were against the specialty hospital. A lot of ordinary people didn't realize that to go to the specialty hospital, you would have had to pay. We believe that funds needs to be put into our regional health facilities. Some of the basic equipment, we're talking about ultrasound machines and all kinds of other medications, the trained doctors, the nurses that need to be there are not present in our regional facilities. So now it's become acceptable that if you live in Berbice, worse yet, if you're in an interior location, healthcare for you must be having to be put in a boat or come down the Essequibo River half dead and hope that you survive the journey to get to the Georgetown Public Hospital. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that the physical machinery, the infrastructure at our hospitals are there. Our nurses have to be paid more. We cannot get the best out of our healthcare professionals if we pay them the salaries that we pay them. And we have to empower them. The other thing too is training clearly is lacking, and therefore a system that provides ongoing, regular updating of skills as new medical information and trends emerge must be available to all health practitioners. So those are some of the things that we are committed to putting in place immediately, and there has to be accountability. Um, this the week that's just ended, again there is a family where they went to a health center to get the regular shots that a young child gets, and clearly there was an overdose or an incorrect medication um, prescribed in an injection form to a small child, and the child has died. Now, how do you begin to tell a parent, a mother and a father, and worse yet, not provide any kind of explanation for them? What is typical in a Ghana environment is that Friday in the newscast, the nurses at the Plaisance Health Center were complaining that the father was victimizing them and they felt threatened. Yet nobody has spoken to these parents yet to give them a real explanation as to how you could take a child to a health center to get a vaccination and the child who was previously healthy not come home with you. Those are the kinds of things that we're very lax on. And we have to change the system. Everybody has to be accountable, and we have to raise our standards in the provision of healthcare.
Raquel TC said, I am so happy she spoke to the NDS. That was an all-inclusive strategy. If we can merge this with LCDS and ideas, for example, from SM and involve people, would be a step forward. Raquel,
absolutely. And one
Cathy,
of the things,
can you for our non-Guyanese listeners tell us what the LCDS and SM is?
sorry, I didn't hear who that question is
For our
directed.
non-Guyanese listeners, perhaps Raquel will tell us LCDS. What is that actually?
Did you say Raquel is going to say that?
No. I said perhaps she might come back and tell us what it means.
Sorry.
LCDS. But go ahead. You were saying something.
What was I saying? I was saying really that, as Stanley has said and as David has said, that I think that within the first 5 years, we could see changes in a lot of these sectors. We can create an environment and a vision where Guyanese can see that we're going forward. What we need to do is not rocket science. It's not rocket science. It can be implemented, and we can see change in a short space of time.
Stanley, can you explain Guyana as a bridge to CARICOM countries and the rest of South America?
Well, I'll do it very briefly, Selvin. Guyana is the only English-speaking country on South America continent. If you look at where we are positioned on the northeastern corner of South America, we are the natural in the natural alignment between whether it's Suriname, Brazil, to the Caribbean countries, and then onto the southeastern United States. I mean, if you were to look at the map, you see that we are the obvious southern end of that chain. And anybody who wants to do business in this part of the world that involves the Caribbean, South America, and beyond, Guyana is the ideal spot to set up that base because English speaking, and we can get from Guyana to anywhere within the region relatively easy. And with more development, obviously more airlines will be coming, and we can do that a lot cheaper as well. And the good thing also is that Guyana has a significant amount of natural resources, as we all know. We are blessed with resources that the entire rest of the Caribbean doesn't have. But we do not have the requisite skills or collateral capital, to develop it ourselves on our own. So if we had a very, well, not receptive, but of policies that would invite and welcome foreign investment, where those investors are expected to obey the laws of Guyana, provide equal opportunities for Guyanese as well as whoever else that we bring into Guyana, it is easy to see that Guyana can become the entrepot like what Singapore has been for Southeast Asia. Again, our geography gives us that advantage. Our weather and climatic conditions, we have good weather year round. Many people, I know a lot of expats who have come to Guyana over the years that said, if your country had a better system of security, better politics, we will be happy to retire in Guyana. And I mean, everybody knows that. And if you were to create the kind of environment that David and Cathy are talking about in Guyana, the number of Guyanese, if we had good security and good infrastructure that will come back to Guyana, we'll have to build an airport 10 times the size of the one we got right now. Because that would be the reality. Everywhere I go, Guyanese says, boy, if only the country can turn around, we all want to come. Ask David, for instance. Ask Cathy. Well, not Cathy is here. In fact, I take some blame for Cathy being here. She'll tell you, I encouraged her to come back many years ago. But many others like David, given half an opportunity, whether it's to be involved in the education system or whatever, under the right conditions, will pack their bags tomorrow and come back.
Stanley, what do you personally believe is possible and can happen if Guyana remains unchanged?
If things remain the way they are,
yes, sir,
the country will come apart. Simple.
as that. Anon said, Cathy just mentioned accountability. How do we make the entire government, present and future, accountable to the nation? Stanley, you want to take a stab at that since you're on?
That's not very difficult at all, Selvin. I mean, systems of accountability exist in all over the world. I mean, corruption is not unique to Guyana by any means. But what is unique to Guyana is the level of corruption. I mean, in every developed country, there's corruption. Everybody knows that. But when that corruption caters for maybe 50% of the GDP of the country, then we have a big problem. And as Cathy said, you know, in Guyana, when you are found to be corrupt, you don't get kicked out. You get kicked up. You get kicked upstairs so you can do it at an even higher level. And that is one of the tragedies about our society. I mean, when I was in the Public Accounts Committee, I can relate stories, but I'm not going to bore the public with that, where people were found stealing. And when I asked the chairman of Public Accounts to establish what happened with the persons who were caught, he said they were being promoted. So, I mean, what's the message that you're sending? You got caught stealing, so let me put you higher so you can steal more. And those are systems that we don't have to create or invent. They exist in all parts of the world, in societies that are more developed and more sophisticated than ours. So it's nothing that we need to invent. I mean, all the problems that Guyana has have been experienced, whether it's by the United States, Canada, Europe, you name it. And all we need to do is to, as I always tell people, international best practice is all we need to implement in Guyana. What is the internationally acceptable best practices or whatever it is we want to do in Guyana?
That's
And
good.
you know,
For the next minute, Kathy and David, any parting words?
Well, on the point that Stanley was just talking about, I would like to say that what we need to do really is to strengthen our institutions. We've had a lot of institutions that have played a very powerful and important role since independence. But we've seen over the last 2 decades an emphasis on destroying and taking away the independence of those institutions. So we have to strengthen them. We have to give them the requisite financing, skills, and support so they can run and can operate at the way they're supposed to. And also, we have to make sure that they're independent. And here we're talking about the Integrity Commission. We're talking about the procurement. We talked about the Procurement Commission. The judiciary has to be independent. The tax system. I mean, all these are things where in Guyana, if you know somebody, the policing system, if you know somebody, everybody knows that you could pass a little money and you could get away with whatever you want. And so we have to get back to basics.
Dr. Hinds, any parting words?
Sterling, I would like to end by saying that history presents every nation with opportunities. And we in Guyana have had our fair share of opportunities to break out of the logjams that we have found ourselves in. And sometimes we have taken advantage of them. Other times we have not taken as much advantage as we should have. And I think we in Guyana are fortunate. The people of Guyana gave us an opening in 2011. And I continue to believe that 2011 was the most important moment in our post-colonial history, where for the first time, the Guyanese people gave us a divided government, not to divide the country. They gave us a divided government to unite the country. And on both sides of the political divide, I would argue that we did not grasp the importance of that gift from the Guyanese people. And here again, we have another opportunity, 3 years later, to correct that mistake. I think May 11 offers Guyanese the opportunity to make a big down payment in that regard, in correcting the mistakes that we made 3 years ago. And I'm sure that we would. I think the Guyanese people have risen to this moment. And I hope our politicians, our political leaders, read correctly what is happening in our society, and that the outcome of May 11 is not squandered again. Because every time we squander opportunities, we find ourselves deeper in the hole. And in a country like Guyana, it's a complex country. It has to be a complex country. It was home to slavery, home to colonialism, and home to indentureship. It has to be a complex place. And a complex place needs a complex approach. And I think most times our politicians take simplistic approaches to complex problems. And I have a feeling that this time around, the political leaders are listening to the people of this country. Like Stanley, I believe if we do not grasp this opportunity, our country will be torn apart.
Yeah.
And there are countries that exist on the edge. We look at Haiti, our sister country, which for 2 centuries has existed just on that edge. It's not becoming extinct, but it's not lifting itself out of the hole that it finds itself in. And we in Guyana run the risk of becoming like that. So that I urge Guyanese who are listening to tell Guyanese who are not listening to seize this time and to seize this moment. But I'm also urging the politicians, and Cathy is one of the active ones, urging them to not misread this moment and to read it as a historic gift that the people of Guyana are giving us. Those thousands of people on the streets of Guyana are doing what people do, and that is they're using their bodies to make a serious statement. We are not standing for this anymore. And so I want to make that plea. I want to make that plea for the sake of Guyana, for the sake of all of us Guyanese, that we must not allow this moment to go a-begging. In 2006, we tried to get a united movement. It did not materialize. In 2011, we made one step closer. In 2015, we have made a giant step closer. And I want to say something here, you know. I want to commend the AFC because often it is the smaller organizations who have to make these big steps. In 2011, it was the WPA who made the big step to align itself with an old enemy. And in 2015, it's the AFC that has made that bold step to go against the grain of sentiments among some sections of the population to bring this nation together. And you know, we have to celebrate that. But the biggest way to celebrate it is to go to the polls on May 11th and to validate that historic movement.
Dr. Hinds, what a wonderful closing. And I want to thank all the participants, Cathy Hughes, Stanley Ming, and yourself, Dr. David Hinds, for such a very informative and very energizing and encouraging panel discussion this afternoon. You know, we spoke about modernization, we spoke about the importance of educating our people and preparing them for such a transformation. And Cathy alluded or spoke on national development strategy. And of course, Dr. Hinds, you spoke eloquently on seizing the time and the moment and the opportunity. And Stanley, with your vision for 2030, I am confident, I'm hopeful for a better Guyana. And thank you so very much. Good night. I have to move on to the next guest, but thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Night night.
I got it.